Well, welcome to this record-breaking day in July. We're supposed to have one of the hottest days of the year. This is the monthly broadcast of Utah Valley Technology and Genealogy Group. My name is Marilyn Thompson. We are registered with the IRS and the state of Utah as an educational nonprofit corporation. We normally start with a word of prayer, and Carol Hill will give us that.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for the opportunity that we have to meet and to be together and to be able to listen to this recording from RootsTech. We're grateful for all of the many ways in which we can listen and learn and be able to develop our skills as genealogists. And we're grateful at this time for Marilyn that we'll be conducting, and pray that thy spirit will be with each of us and with anyone that's struggling with any kind of health issues. We're grateful for thy son especially, and we say his name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Carol. Today is July 11th, 2026. Our presentation will be by Diahan Southard, and it's entitled DNA Swim School, Part 1, Floating with One DNA Match. This meeting is being broadcast remotely via Zoom and Facebook Live. Our next monthly meeting will be on August the 8th, and it'll be a presentation by Karen Clifford. And in September, we'll have a presentation by Wendy Brimhall. Today's presentation and past presentations are available on the UV-Tag YouTube channel. We welcome supporting members of our group in this Zoom broadcast and anyone else watching Facebook Live on the YouTube channel. And if you would like to make comments or ask questions, even though this is a recorded broadcast, please put them into the chat feature in Zoom or post them on the comments in Facebook. She will not be able to respond, but perhaps we will be able to assist if you had any questions. I know myself, I have been delighted that we are going to show this. I just recently had a dead-end breakthrough resulting from DNA, and was inspired by one of Diahan Southhand's presentations at RootsTech. For those that would like to know more about UV-Tag, our group, you can request a copy of our monthly newsletter, Tagology, emailing to uvtagginfo, taginfo@gmail.com. Today's meeting is a rebroadcast from RootsTech 2026, and it's the first of 3 one-hour classes on the subject of DNA. If you will look online, there will be a handout for this that's available on Facebook. So because this is part 1, there are 2 other sessions that you can also find at the RootsTech 2026. And that's you can go to familysearch.org, or else you can go to RootsTech 2026 and look up those, or the links, I believe, will be put online into Facebook. So the presentation about the DNA Swim School, Part 1, by Diahan Southard, is a beginner-friendly session, and she will help you to get your footing or floating by focusing on one DNA match. If your match list feels like it's deep, well, then this class is going to be your life jacket. We'll show you how to get a simple, clear research goal, and then guide you on how to choose a match that can help you to take your first meaningful steps. You'll get a friendly walkthrough of your testing company's match list tools. She says there's no goggles required, so you'll know about all those menus and labels and numbers are really telling you. This class is perfect if you're brand new to DNA, or if you've tested and then felt stuck, and you walk away more confident about navigating your match list and ready for your next swim lesson. So Diane Southard has been helping people to use DNA tools for over 20 years. She started her career at the Sorensen Molecular Genealogy Foundation, which created the DNA database that became Ancestry DNA. That was a long time ago. I remember when that started. So after Diane witnessed the power of DNA for family history, but also the difficulty people face in using it effectively, she launched a pioneering career in the DNA education. And so now we're going to begin the presentation, and sit back and hope you can enjoy it.
Welcome, 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 welcome to RootsTech 2026. I'm so excited to see all of you here. Yes, let's celebrate. Let's celebrate. I am Diane Southard, founder and CEO of Your DNA Guide. Our mission is to make DNA actionable and accessible to anyone, yes, even you, who say you don't like science, which is just ridiculous. Of course you love science, you just haven't had the right teacher. So this year at RootsTech, we are doing a really fun swim school theme. But I just realized before I tell you that, I need to tell you this. RootsTech has asked me to ask you to silence all of your electronic devices and to not take any audio or video recording, but you can take as many pictures of my slides as you want. I spend an inordinate amount of time on them, so go for it. And then, as I was saying, we are doing a swim school theme this year, so we are doing a 3-part series where we will be taking one case study through 3 sets of lectures to try to show you kind of in real time, in a way, how genetic genealogy is done. So today, this morning, we will be talking about floating with one DNA match. So my goal today is really to help you find just one DNA match that's worthy of your time and your research efforts to try to find something about the ancestor that you're missing. Tomorrow morning, right here at 9:30, we will be learning to tread water, which means, yes, you're going to get a little wet as you get in the water of your DNA matches, but you'll be floating still with the assistance of a life jacket, so don't worry. But if you're feeling really brave, on Saturday afternoon, we will be swimming in your DNA matches. So no more flotation device, but I will provide goggles and fins. So without further ado, let's start floating. So to learn to float, we are going to first learn to set a good research goal. Then we're going to verify your current family tree, because let's be honest, if what you have is wrong, there's no point in going after more. Then we're going to find a place that matters to your family history, and we're going to find a person that matters. Are you guys up for it? All right, let's do it. So first of all, setting a good goal. If you want to use DNA in your research, and I'm assuming you do, that's why you're here, then you will need to be using DNA to find a 3 times great-grandparent or closer. And ideally, that person has descendants who have taken a DNA test. Because DNA can't make relatives appear out of nowhere, they have to have taken a test. So it seems obvious, but also it's very true. I have some dear friends in the audience who are from Greece. And if they could just get more descendants to take tests, they would have a lot more success in their genetic genealogy efforts. All right, so if that's our goal, when I look at my family tree, the first thing I'm going to do is only ever look at the oldest person I've had tested who's a descendant of the ancestor I want to research. So I've had both of my parents take a DNA test, which means that for me personally, I am genetically irrelevant. I don't matter for family history. I matter for my own personal identity and story, but I never look at my own DNA test results when I'm doing family history. So we are going to be working with my dad, and specifically, we are going to be looking at this 2 times great-grandparent level. You can see my family tree's looking decent. But I'm really wanting to focus down here and look for the parents of my ancestor, Richmond, Virginia Clonch. Now, if you are just barely starting out, like how many of you in this room would characterize yourself as beginners in family history? Awesome. How many are like, I'm a little beyond that, I'm a little, maybe advanced beginner? Okay, and they're like, oh no, I'm intermediate. Okay, so no matter where you're starting, but especially if you're new, cut yourself a break and let's do something that's actually probably going to give you results. So my recommendation if you're starting out is to look for a 2x great-grandparent. I feel like a 2x great-grandparent offers a lot of floating capacity here. It's this nice, big, lazy air mattress. And when you're looking for a 2x great-grandparent, it's that perfect mix for most of us of having enough tested DNA descendants to make the database worthwhile and have enough records present that you can verify the DNA connections that you make. If you try to do closer than that, perhaps you are interested in finding just a great-grandparent. You can see how that floating mattress shrinks a little. You're just gonna have less room before you're gonna have to get in the water. Okay, and you think, well, why? Shouldn't closer ancestors be easier to find with DNA? And the answer is sometimes. But the truth is, the closer you come to the present, the less time there has been for descendants to be generated. And remember, if descendants haven't tested, you're stuck. Okay, so if you go back even further, you're looking for a grandparent, and I know many of you are looking for parents or grandparents. The truth is, you're gonna be in a little circular floaty. You're gonna have to get in the water, probably. Because unless your parent or half-sibling or someone very close to you have tested, which again is a very small group of people that could have tested to give you the answer that you need, you're going to have to do more to figure out your mystery. Okay? So again, 2x great-grandparents are amazing. 3x great-grandparents, I know a lot of you are in this kind of category. And you're like, well, can I use DNA to find my 3x great-grandparents? And yes, you can. But your flotation device is going to be a pool noodle. And I don't know about you, but I can't quite fit all of me on a pool noodle. So you will be in the water. Okay, there's just very little opportunity for just floating in DNA if you're looking for a 3x great-grandparent, okay? And as we'll see throughout the week, you can get wet, I'll teach you. It's fine, you can swim in this. But if you're just starting out, consider that 2x great-grandparent level. It's just going to provide you the most protection from the waters of DNA, and I think you're gonna find the most success. And that's what you need at first, right? You've gotta feel success or you're gonna give up. How many of you have given up on DNA? Ever. Okay, but you're here, right? Which means you're done with that giving up stuff, and today is the day you're gonna understand it. Okay, so again, these are my requirements, and you can only control one of them. So keep that in mind. If you're determined to find your 5x great-grandparents, you should be. They deserve to be found. They need their stories told. But autosomal DNA, the kind we usually talk about when we're talking about DNA, it's just not going to be as helpful as you were hoping. But good news, we do have 2 other kinds of DNA. Y-DNA traces a direct male line, mitochondrial DNA traces a direct female line. They're also very powerful tests that can tell you about your family history. Family Tree DNA is a company here. They have a nice big booth in the exhibit hall. They offer both of these tests, and I highly recommend investigating this kind of testing, but we don't have time to talk about it today. So, if you're going to use DNA, that person needs to have tested descendants. So when I look at Richmond, Virginia Clonch, this man that I want to research, I look at the family tree that I have built for him, and he's got lots of kids, which is great. That's a good start. If you come from a single child family, again, it's just going to be harder. You cannot float through your DNA matches if there aren't descendants. It just won't work, okay? So if I want to see if these descendants have taken a DNA test, our companies actually have some fairly simple ways you can just quickly look and see. So at Ancestry, you can click here on the By Ancestor. So I'm in the DNA match page, and they have this menu at the top. I'm going to click on By Ancestor, and it's going to take me, to a list of my ancestors. And so that's super helpful. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. You can also look for this information at MyHeritage. They have a tool called the Theory of Family Relativity, which I think is super clever. But you can click on filters in your DNA match list, and then you'll need to click right here on labels, and then on tree details, and choose people that have the theory of family relativity. So then you can look for that ancestor that you want to research and see if there are people who are descendants of that person who have taken a DNA test. 23andMe also has a way for you to do this. It's called simply a family tree tool. The thing about 23andMe is that they don't incorporate genealogy information, so everything you see in this tool is just DNA based, which, can we just take a second and be like, what? Hold up. They just looked at my DNA matches and they created a family tree that's mostly right, at least how people are connected to each other. You guys, can you imagine 10 years ago this being possible? It just wasn't. It's a really exciting time to be a genetic genealogist. These are incredible innovations that are making it easier than ever to do good research. So at 23andMe, you can see, so there's me down there at the bottom, and you can see that I have some cousins who are descendants of that couple I've circled. I just don't know who the couple is because 23andMe doesn't know who the couple is. So you have to kind of do some of your own, finagling to figure out who these people are, but the information is there for you to identify if the couple you want to research has tested descendants. So we're going to work here in Ancestry. Again, I've clicked on By Ancestor. I'm going to scroll down until I see Richmond, Virginia Clonch. I can just mouse over his name, and you can see here that I didn't. You know what, sometimes, guys, you go over your slides like over and over and over again, and you're still like, how did that get there? Anyway, when you moused over this, it turns dark and it says 38. Okay, so there are 38 tested descendants of Richmond, Virginia Clonch, which is pretty awesome. Now, you would want to investigate that, but we're not going to do that today. We're going to do it tomorrow. So tomorrow I'll teach you how to look through those 38 DNA matches to see if they're legit, okay? Because Through Lines, this tool at Ancestry, is what I call a cheating tool. Now, what happens when you cheat? It's not always right. I mean, you get an answer, right? But it's not always the right answer. Okay, so there is a little work you probably should do, but I'll teach you that tomorrow if you want to come back here at 9:30. So, first of all, checking to see if they have tested descendants. So this is my research question. Who is the father of Richmond, Virginia Clonch? Now, something that we teach in the search party, which is a fun, do genealogy method, is to ask a really good research question. And we say that your research goal should be specific, contain the date and the place involved. Now, I'll be doing a search party lecture tomorrow afternoon here at 4:30 in this room, if you're interested in kind of learning our way to actually do genealogy. But if I applied the search party method, I would change my research goal to who was the father of Richmond, Virginia Clonch, who was born in Texas in 1860. Okay? So, you should set a research goal that involves finding a 3 times great-grandparent or closer and contains the place and the date of the person that you're looking for. How many of you feel like you have a research goal that fits these parameters? Some of you, okay? This is the strongest way to start. And remember, you can find any kind of ancestor you want back to that 3 times great-grandparent level. But looking for a 2 times great is the easiest route and the one that's going to afford you the most floating if you're feeling a little nervous or uncertain or averse to getting into the DNA waters. So that's what we're doing. We together over the next 3 days are going to try and do this. We're going to try and find the parents of Richmond, Virginia Claunch. So looking for my dad's 2 times great-grandparents. All right, so first, again, setting a goal. Second is verifying your tree. Now, we can verify our tree in 2 ways. We can verify our tree genealogically, and we can verify our tree genetically. So to verify your tree genealogically, I want you to think about every generation as a link. And at every generation back to that ancestor you want to research, there's a possibility that a mistake has been made. What? You made a mistake? Not you, of course. It was someone else, right? You inherited it from Aunt Marge. It was her mistake. Still, you need to make sure that you have a solid paper trail back to the ancestor you want to research. I think so many times we just say, oh, well, I have that person's name, so I'm going to go look for their parents or grandparents. But how certain are you of those initial connections? So verifying your tree genealogically means going back and looking at the records that you have. Do you have just one random record that you use to make that initial connection? If you do, you need to start there with DNA as well, but verifying your tree is so important before you move on. So again, tomorrow at 4:30, we are going to be talking about kind of how to do this. How do you verify a tree you already have so that you can be confident in moving forward? So verifying your tree is the next step. The next thing we want to do is to find a place. Now, there are actually 2 kinds of DNA test results you get when you take any DNA test. You get results that are going to link you to certain places, and you're going to get results that link you to people. Very different, actually, results, and you need to look at them differently. So let's start by understanding these 2. So again, that place information is going to give you some direction in your genealogy research. The people that you connect to are going to give you a different kind of direction. So let's start with the places. There are actually 2 kinds of places that are given to you by our DNA testing companies. The first are called regions. These are big, broad swaths of land that represent where your ancestors may have been thousands of years ago. So even though they're kind of interesting and they tell us, oh, you're 22% Irish or something, and it is part of your identity and who you are and part of your story, it's not very actionable in our family history. So instead, we are going to focus on these smaller places called journeys or communities, depending on which company we're at. And these smaller places reflect where your ancestors may have been in the last 300 years. This is the sweet spot of our genealogy research. We are all looking in that time frame. And these results can give us actionable next steps. So if you're at Ancestry, for example, the number 1 place we see are these big maps with the percentages. These are regional results. And again, while interesting and sometimes valuable, for the most part, they aren't actionable because they only represent where your ancestors were thousands of years ago. And most of us just aren't looking in that kind of time frame. But the community information is very valuable and something you can for sure float on. So if you've had multiple family members tested, I think it's a really interesting activity to look through these these journeys to see what's the same and what's different. So like I said, I've had both of my parents tested and I never look at my own results. So this is actually kind of fun for me because I hadn't really looked at my own stuff. So you can see that I've tried to decide which of my communities came from which of my parents. So I can see that that top community definitely came from my dad, but actually both of my parents have these bottom 2 communities. So that's interesting. Even though my parents aren't related to each other, They belong to similar genetic communities. So interesting fact. Then if we look at my parents, you can see that I'm missing my mom's Alabama settlers, I'm missing my mom's Catholic Black Sea Germans, and I'm missing my dad's Southern Midwestern settlers. Again, highlighting the importance of working with the older generation. If any of you have anyone remaining on the generation above you, you need to get them tested. It makes such a difference in our research. Your aunts, your uncles, your great aunts, your great uncles, your parents' cousins, any of them are going to be a valuable addition to your research. So let's take a look first, before we try to find something about Richmond, Virginia Claunch on my dad's side. I really encourage you to start investigating these kinds of tools with someone you already know. We're always like, oh, but I already know that. I don't need to. No. Start with what you know. Isn't that like a basic genealogy principle? Start with what you know. So I know that my mom's family came from Odessa, Ukraine, that they migrated to North Dakota. So when I go and look at my mom's ancestry journeys, I can see that reflected. So I'm going to choose 1850, and you can see that I've got this circle around that Ukraine-Odessa region, and you can see that nice arc where they all came to North Dakota. We can zoom in on that even and see that there was a group of people who did not come to the US, but do you see how they went to these other locations in Europe? So if I'm looking for people who are descendants of my early ancestors and they didn't come to the US, I have actual locations where I can look for them. And if we keep going out past 1850, all the way here to 1925, we can see that migration continuing. That in 1925, you can see that whole contingent of our family in North Dakota, but where did they go? They went to several states, but I'm from Washington State. Are you guys feeling the absolute magic of this? No one told Ancestry this was our family line. Nobody. My mom's DNA has traced this path. My mom's DNA has lived this journey, and her modern DNA was tested, and this story of her family's migration was told. It's absolutely amazing, you guys. I've been doing this for over 25 years. And in 2007, when 23andMe came out with the very first autosomal DNA test, they could tell you if you were European, Asian, or African. 3 categories. And we were like, oh, that's so amazing. And now they can tell me that my mom's family, they were German. They went to the Ukraine and started a settlement there, free land. Then the Russian army said, okay, everybody who lives here is going to have to fight in our army. And they were like, oh, nope. And they left. They migrated to North Dakota because when you live in Russia, North Dakota feels like home because it's so cold and flat. And so they did. They made a home there. And then it's so unbelievable to me that they can even trace that my mom's particular line moved to Washington State. These journeys hold clues to your ancestral migrations. So now let's look at our question. Remember, we're trying to figure out where Richmond, Virginia Claunch's father came from. I don't know. We're not sure. So I'm looking for clues in these journeys. So here's my dad's list of journeys. So if we start looking here, we can see West Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee settlers. Okay, we've got 2 lines from Kentucky. It's very possible that one of these lines is giving us this signal. But which one? One's on the dad's side, one's on the mom's side. Well, you can actually ask Ancestry to show you the side that this community comes from. So if you go up here and click on by parent, it shows you, so I've clicked on both parents, and that West Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee is actually from both sides. So I can't tell, Ancestry can't tell, if this signal that brought us into this community is coming from the dad's side or the mom's side, or likely a little of both. But for you, it might be really helpful to check that by parent side. Okay? So then I've got this Southern Midwestern settlers. Well, what does that mean? Well, if you click through, it shows you a map, and you can see here it's outlining basically this kind of Tennessee-ish region. So it looks like this is a Tennessee connection. And I'm looking through the locations in my dad's tree, and I do not see Tennessee. And sometimes at this point, it's where we're like, oh, I don't know where that came from. But guys, this could be the clue. This signal came from someone, and if I don't have people already in my tree who I know are giving me that signal, it could be coming from one of them. So just by process of elimination, I may have found something that might be helpful as I'm looking for records about Richmond's parents. And scooting all the way up here, we see this Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Texas settlers. And Richmond is my Texas ancestor. So I'm pretty sure this signal is coming from him. So if you're researching an ancestor and he's the only one that could have given you this signal, you'll want to click through and look at the resources provided. So one thing that Ancestry does is they put your ancestor on these maps so you can see where they are. So you can see that's Richmond right there in Texas. But you can see Ancestry is suggesting that not only are we part of this community, we're part of a micro community, this Central South Arkansas settlers. And that's interesting. The smaller the community, the smaller the footprint on the map, the more confident Ancestry has to be about your connection to that place. If it's not confident, it's going to be like, you're from here. Okay? But if they're confident, they're going to be like, you're from here. So if I kind of put an Arkansas map up there, a county map, and I kind of zoom in, it's really only a handful of counties that are covered by what looks to be this swatch on the map. Could I now, just take action? Could I go and look at records in these Arkansas communities and look for Claunch family members? Absolutely. And that's the exciting part about floating. Literally at any point, you can feel a little sunburned by your DNA and just get off the mat. Just go do genealogy. Like right now, at this point, we could just end the lecture and we could all just go look at records in these Arkansas counties and see what we can find. You don't have to keep going. You don't have to keep floating. You can just get off and do genealogy if you want to. But be careful. Be careful, because just because there's this very specific place in your journey, it does not mean your ancestor was from there. Remember we were looking at those migrations, how my ancestral line left the Ukraine and came to the US, but those other places went to these other locations? That's happening all the time, right? Not everybody goes where your line went. So all this is really saying is that someone in one of my lines lived in this place. It doesn't have to be Richmond or his parents. It could be Richmond's second cousin and their family, which is still valuable, right? It is, it's still valuable, but it might not be exactly what we're hoping that it is. So be very careful. It is all good information, but just be careful how much faith or trust you put in one piece of information. Okay? So going back to this 1850 Texas journey, we can also look at these migrations. Where were people going? Where did they come from? So you can see here that from Texas, like if we do a reverse migration, right? People that are in Texas in 1850, where did they come from? They came, it looks like, a lot from Tennessee. Okay? So what does that mean? Well, it means that you start looking at your records again. There's a lot of people who think they know the father of Richmond, Virginia Claunch, by the way. A lot. And they all have different opinions, of course, about who he is. A very popular opinion is this guy whose name is also Richmond Claunch. Makes sense. Okay? Where was he from? St. Clair, Alabama. And I'm like, wait a second, Alabama is not Tennessee. But then I was like, wait a second, do you see that little one migration circle from Alabama? Huh. Wouldn't that be interesting? If this journey was pointing me exactly back to this guy who was possibly even my actual ancestor. So if we kind of zoom in on this and we go back, because remember, Richmond was born in 1860. So looking at 1850 is helpful, but looking at 1825 might be even more helpful because his parents, theoretically, were living in somewhere in 1825. And if we look at the 1825, we can see kind of two major places where people, again, where did they eventually end up? Eventually they're in Texas. So this tool helps you trace back in time places where your genetics were showing up. It looks like a map, it looks like a physical migration. These are genetic migrations. This is where your DNA could have possibly been in 1825. Can you sense the wow I'm sensing? Guys, this is amazing stuff. It's amazing. So, two possible places. We talked about Tennessee, and then we've got down here this South Carolina. Well, look at this. Richmond Claunch, who people think is my guy's dad, his wife, Anna, was from South Carolina. Interesting. Because our journeys aren't going to follow just the one line we're following, right? It follows everybody's lines. We're getting Richmond's parents, his grandparents, his great-grandparents are all falling into this journey. So, what did we learn by examining journeys at Ancestry? Well, we got a handful of leads. He could be from Arkansas, specifically maybe even one of these counties. He could be from Tennessee or Alabama in 1850. And in 1825, we've got Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, and it gets a little longer. But what did I have before? Nothing. I mean, I had a lot of people's opinions about where his family was from. And now I have some genetic evidence of places where my dad's DNA was in 1825. Amazing, amazing. Now we can do a similar thing at MyHeritage. So they have these broad regions, right? The massive, long time ago places, but they also have these communities. And so again, paying closer attention to these communities, and if you click through them, they give you clues like confidence level, like how confident is MyHeritage that your DNA was in this place at this time? Pay attention to those. There are statistical models that we don't want to understand because they understand them. They're going to tell us high, low, very low, okay? So trust them. They're trying to give you information by telling you how confident they are in your connections. And then you'll want to also pay attention to how they nest them. I really like this at MyHeritage because Southern USA could apply in a lot of ways. A lot of people from a lot of countries went to the Southern US. But they're saying, I'm specifically part of a community who came from England. So pay attention to how they have kind of sub-categorized your communities. It gives you clues and hints about origins that might help you decide which branch this community belongs to. I like MyHeritage's timeline at the bottom as well. It's really easy to slide through the years and kind of watch your map change over time. So if you go down here again, you're going to want to focus on the time frames that are most valuable to your research. So as I flip through the timelines, I can see here that around 1900, I've got a large contingency of people in my community are in Texas. So again, of all the lines in my family tree, I can be pretty confident that this particular community has something to do with Richmond because of that connection to Texas. Now, does it have to be him? Could I be in this community because of some other line? Yes. But it's a lead. It's a floating lead. It's something that you can follow. So again, dragging that timeline back to the times that are most valuable in your research is going to be the most helpful to find the places that matter the most. Now, 23andMe has a similar tool, but again, 23andMe does not have any family tree information. So everything you see is based on genetics and upon your personally reported location. So a lot of modern day locations listed by modern people, and they've been able to create these kind of smaller micro groups among these bigger regional groups. So they're listed like this. They don't have a specific name at 23andMe, but you can see like under that Dutch and Northern German, there's that Lower Saxony. That's the micro region that has something to do with a much closer connection to your family history. So you can kind of like zoom in and you can see all of these different, so this is my mom's connection. So that Baden, Württemberg, Bavaria, Swabia, all that stuff, that German, super interesting. And at the other companies, I've kind of dropped out of these more micro communities. I just don't have enough DNA to belong. But here at 23andMe, they've picked that up. And that was really fun for me to see because again, I'm genetically irrelevant. And sometimes it's nice to be validated a little bit. Like, it's nice, look, they can see who I am, it's great. Okay, but if you scroll down even further, all the way at the bottom, you can see these additional ancestry regions. Now, this is only available to you if you have a 23andMe Plus subscription, but this is their version of those migration paths that I was showing you at the other companies. And they're really fascinating. And again, European diaspora. This is my mom's journey, her family, from Odessa to North Dakota. So you can see it here. These early German Americans from Morton and Stark counties, and that is North Dakota. Guys, they're listing 2 counties in a state that my family is from, and they have 0 genealogy information. 0. And they're able to tell me the genetically irrelevant one of this. Okay? So pay attention. These ethnicity that I used to call them, I've been lecturing for years. You can probably go back and find an old lecture where I stood up here and I said, yeah, those ethnicity results, they're interesting, but they're more like a coffee table piece. They're interesting to look at, but they're not going to tell you anything. That has totally changed. Your ethnicity results can lead you to actual places that are of interest to you in your family history. So how do you use journeys or communities to actually find a match, though? It's nice to have places. And again, you could jump off at this point. Now that you have a list of places, you could start to do some good genealogy research because you have somewhere to look for records. But having matches is also really valuable. So you can use your journeys at Ancestry to find matches. So you click on a journey, and then it's going to take you to like this main journey page. There's a lot of cool information here, but you'll want to scroll down and click on View Matches. And it's going to give you a list of a few matches that share your journey. Most of the time, they're like your siblings and your first cousins. And you're like, thanks, Ancestry. Not helpful, okay? But you can go out to the filter feature at MyHeritage at Ancestry on the main match list, and you can filter by community, and that might surface some matches that are going to be helpful to you. So that brings up finding a person using filters. So over at MyHeritage, I really like their filters feature because it's It's got a lot of buttons, so you can like try a bunch of different combinations of filters to see kind of what results you get. But in our case, the most helpful is going to be this location filter. So the location filter is telling you about the current location of the person who has tested. So if you're looking for deep American roots, not going to be helpful. But if you are looking for an immigrant ancestor who is, you know what country they were from, you can filter by country and find people who have tested who are actually from that country. So very, very helpful. Oh, and I left, see guys, I tell you, I am my worst editor. See how I left the MyHeritage logo up there and we're at 23andMe now? Who does that? It's just me. It's fine, ignore it. This is 23andMe, everyone. And at 23andMe, you can see that they have filters along the left side. And you go down here, again, you can use any of these filters and some of them are really helpful, but the most helpful one is also a 23andMe Plus feature. So you go down there to Ancestry Composition, and you can choose, again, which of those regions that you want to filter by and look for people who are in your specific region. You can also search all of these databases by surname. So I'm lucky enough that I have a relatively uncommon surname that I can use to search. So again, if you don't, then this won't work as well. But I can just go to 23andMe, I can put in the Clonch surname, and I can say, hey, do you have anybody with this surname? And it will search the surname of the person tested, as well as any surnames that person has entered into their account. And so when I do that, what? There's a bunch of people that have the Clonch surname somewhere in their account, including these 3 people who actually have the Clonch surname. So in just like 30 seconds, I have gone from 5,000 matches at MyHeritage, or see guys, at 23andMe, they're gonna strike me down, like poor 23andMe. So you can go from 5,000 matches to 3. These 3 are all worth looking at, all of them. So you can do, again, like I said, a similar thing at all of these companies. You can search by surname. So at Actually MyHeritage, you can put in Clonch there at the top, and I had 20 matches. Again, out of the thousands of matches that you have, searching by surname can pull out a few that are probably worth looking at. If I click through one of those at MyHeritage, you can see there's these sections you'll want to pay attention to. So shared ancestral surnames and shared ancestral places. These are all ways you can easily review this match to see how far you really want to investigate, how much you want to do. And of course, if they have a family tree posted, even better. So I found this DNA match, and they go back to this George T. Clonch, 1855. Remember when Richmond was born? 1860. What are you thinking? Brothers? Maybe? But literally, in less than 2 minutes, I searched MyHeritage by surname, I clicked through to this match, I scrolled down to their family tree, and I see this guy's name. And it gives me an actionable something to do. Okay? So, learning to float. We set a good research goal, we verified our tree with genealogy, we used journeys and communities to find places, we used filters and the search tool to find people that are actually going to be helpful. So my goal for you was to let you just float in your DNA match list, to give you a way to find places or people, we call them best mystery matches at your DNA guide, that are actionable, that you can actually do something with, without having to do all the things. There's so many voices out there in the DNA community telling you, you need to use this tool, and you need to do things like this, and you need to use this chromosome thingy, and you need to sort your matches like this, and you have to use all of these labels, and it can feel really overwhelming. And every year I come to RootsTech and people say, this is the year, I'm gonna do it. And it's like you're going into surgery. Like, it shouldn't feel that way. So several years ago at RootsTech, probably on this very stage, when I was done giving a lecture very much like this one, I stepped down from the stage here and I was answering people's questions. And this beautiful woman came up to me and she had her notebook and she's like flipping, I think she took like 7 pages of notes in my 45-minute lecture. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And she's like, okay, I had a question. And she's getting kind of flustered looking through her notes. And I was like, it's all good. We got lots of time. And she looks up at me and she goes, I was just so determined to do DNA this year and I don't want to. And I said, you don't have to. She was like, what? I was like, you don't have to. You don't have to do DNA. It's a tool. It's a way that might accelerate your research. But you don't have to do it. And you don't have to do it the way everybody else is doing it. You can do these things. You can dip your toe in on the other side of your floaty. You don't have to full on swim. You really don't. There's a lot of progress that can be made by taking very small steps. So don't let anybody else define for you what your next DNA step should be. And most importantly, if you feel like getting out of the pool, just go sit on the beach, okay? It's fine. It's fine. I hope I made it feel fun and like interesting and accessible. But if I didn't and you're still like, you know what? Beach is looking good. It's fine. Because the most important thing you can do for your family, in my opinion, is tell their story. So this is my ancestor, Lucy Clonch. This is Richmond's daughter, my dad's grandmother. And MyHeritage just came out with this cool like AI biography thing. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but I tried it for Lucy and it was really fun to read it. Really fun. They brought in some, you can choose to like have it bring in some like additional information about the time and the places that she lived. And it was super interesting and I really loved it. But the story I love most about Lucy is the story that I'm 12.5% of her. Her DNA that lived through the things that she lived through, I got it. And so when I look at this picture of her, this is her and her first husband living, I think this is them in Oregon. And I think about what brought her to this moment. She was born in Texas, and she was like 3 years old. Her parents moved her up to Washington State, to this little tiny town where all they did was log. So literally everyone she knew, every man she knew was probably a logger. Nothing wrong with that. But when a man with an English accent rolls into your little tiny town and you're 17 and you're like, yeah, I'm with him. And she married him. And she left that little tiny town in Washington State, left her family, everything she knew, and she moved to Oregon. And all I know is that by the time she's 23, she has born 3 children and buried 1. Her husband is gone. And I can't find where he went. I hope he died, man, because it's not cool. But probably he died. I think he died in Canada, actually. I don't know what he's doing there. But what do you do? What do you do when you've got now 2 small children, no husband, and no home? Go back to your parents. And she did. She went back to Washington State. Her parents had moved to a tiny town called Centralia, Washington. And she married a nice guy. And they had more kids, thankfully, because that's where my line comes from. And that's what I think of when I look at Lucy J. Clonch. And I think, I got 12.5% of the DNA that lived that journey. I've got 12.5% of the woman who looked around at the circumstances she was in at 17 and said, I can dream of something different. And she fell in love, theoretically, and married a guy and moved to a place she'd never been, and she made a home. I have 12.5% of a woman who buried her 2-year-old, her oldest child, when he was just 2. She made it. She made it through that. I have 12.5% of the DNA of a woman whose husband died, leaving her in a strange place with small children. And she had the courage to show up at home and start over and make a life for herself there and find theoretically love and happiness again and have more children to love. And I think I even look like her a little bit. So if you don't want to tell the DNA story of finding your 3 times great-grandparents using 80 DNA matches, then just tell your story. This is my story now, my 12.5%. So I'm giving you permission to just float on your DNA matches. Go sit on that beach and write your story. Because you are what's left of them. So tell their story through yours. So I have 9 minutes and 13 seconds that I left for questions. We have to be very exact about when we end. So if you have a question, we have some microphones that you can come and stand in a line. If you're joining us online, you can visit our website at yourdnaguide.com/RootsTech. And for those of you who are in the room, as well as for those of you who are online, I put together a little AI swim buddy this year. So if you go to yourdnaguide.com/RootsTech, you can click on the swim buddy, and what it's meant to be is just a reflection tool. It's so hard to come and sit through a 50-minute class and try to understand what you understood. So the purpose of the swim buddy is just a reflection tool. It's to help you sit down with it for 5 minutes, and it's going to ask you some questions and help you kind of reflect on what you learned today and give you some actionable next steps that you want to take based on what you learned and what your needs are. So we'll have that swim buddy available for the next couple of weeks for you to use as you reflect on swim school. So, we don't have anyone in line. Are there really no questions? To me, that means I either did a really bad job, and you're like, let me just get out of here, and that's fine, you can leave, or I did a really good job and you don't have any questions, which I just don't believe. So again, if you have questions, thank you, sir. Look at this brave soul.
What or all tests would you recommend? Family tree DNA, heritage?
All right.
All of them?
Yeah, so he says, what test should I take? Now, in a world of unlimited resources, you just take all the tests, of course. But nobody has unlimited resources. And so you want to ask yourself, what do I want from the test? If you want DNA matches, you want to go where the largest databases are, right? Because the more people means more matches. So Ancestry DNA has the largest database. So they're the first choice if you're looking for the most matches. Now, if you're looking for a site that has integrated genealogy tools, both Ancestry and MyHeritage have integrated genealogy tools, which I think are super important for us. If you're looking for people that haven't really tested anywhere else, you'll probably find them at 23andMe because they appeal to a totally different kind of audience, and a lot of people have only tested at 23andMe, but they're not genealogists, so you kind of have to work with them a little bit. Family Tree DNA is the only one offering Y and mitochondrial DNA testing, which again, I highly recommend for anyone. It's a really valuable addition to your research. So, I mean, right now, like in the exhibit hall, you could probably test at autosomal DNA at Ancestry, MyHeritage, Family Tree DNA, and 23andMe for under $150. So you can just do them all. Okay, and then you'll want that Y DNA, and then you'll want the mitochondrial DNA. So.
I have a question. If we've tested it, Ancestry, is it possible to upload our results to MyHeritage, or is there anywhere else we can upload results to?
Yeah, so if you've tested at Ancestry, you can upload your results into Family Tree DNA, and you can upload them into a place called Living DNA, which we haven't talked about that much. But you can no longer upload them into MyHeritage. You used to be able to do that, but now you'll need to just test.
I had more of a statement. My mother was from Germany, and or Poland, depending on the border, and she moved to South Dakota. And my father from England moved to Tennessee. So we could be neighbors.
Oh, nice, great. Well, hi, neighbor. Perfect.
Hi there. So I'm working through my husband's DNA matches, and we're looking for, my question is, who was the mother of Roderick Ray Hicks, who was born in 1891 in Sequatchie, Tennessee. So it's actually a great-grand, but I'm working through the SMOMS course, and I have thousands of matches. I haven't even gotten down to the 20 centimorgan. So is that going to be workable?
Okay. So she mentioned SMOMS, which is my word for the Shared Matches of Matches tool. So we'll be talking about that on Saturday afternoon. But to answer your question, you don't need to go down that far because you're not looking for that distance of an ancestor, right? You're really looking for third cousins.
Correct.
Right? So you can just only focus on those sharing between 50 and 75 centimorgans.
Okay.
That's it. Just
good.
don't worry about anybody else for now.
Okay. So is it possible then to find that missing great-grandmother?
Anything is possible.
Oh, good. Okay. Because I think I've narrowed it down as to which family line we can
Yes.
narrow it down.
Then
to,
you've done
so.
what you've done. If you've narrowed it down, you've done what DNA can do.
Okay.
It's time to do genealogy.
Okay, good. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, you're up.
Had to check. So through a bit of sabotage and other problems, we took my mother-in-law's DNA hours before she died with MyHeritage because it was the only one that was still doing a cheek swab.
Yeah.
Am I losing anything, because there's no other DNA for her, am I losing anything in uploading those to Ancestry or others versus if I had managed to be able to get the spit from her to do it?
So you cannot upload into Ancestry. The only way to get in is to spit in a tube.
I see.
So you want to then just, if she's not available, does she have siblings that are still alive that could test?
Nope.
Then it's all of you, like it's all of her descendants, as many of them as can test as possible. And that's the only way to do
She
it.
only had 2 kids, and
Okay.
the only one that will give permission is her son. So,
Okay.
is there still hope there? Or?
Of course,
Okay.
didn't we just say this? There is
Just
always
checking
hope.
because-
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. Okay, let me just say one thing that I forgot because RootsTech says we should show this. It's really important that you give feedback to RootsTech about the talks that they have here. And I know that it's a lot, like you're busy in between classes, so let me just tell you, it's just 5 all the way down. Super easy. Okay? And then you can be on your way. Okay, please.
I love your attitude.
Thank you.
About 2.5 years ago, I found out that my mother's grandfather, my great-grandfather, is not the person everybody always thought it was. So being from Hawaii, what I've been able to track is my great-grandmother was born on one island. She got married on that island. She gave birth to my grandfather on another island. And his birth parent was actually a man from China.
Okay.
So now I have found second cousins whose great-grandparents are from, or grandfathers from China.
Yeah.
So I know his date of birth. I know where he had his children with his wife.
Yeah.
And it matches where my great-grandmother, the island that she was from, but not where my grandfather was born. How do I move forward?
So you've hit exactly what I was talking about with the floating things, right? So you're at a generation where the only people who could really verify are going to be like your close-ish relatives.
My first cousin.
Exactly. And so either you have to just like pray that they'll all of a sudden decide to test and that will verify your theory, or you'd have to ask them to test. And again, that's a really hard thing to ask of someone because you're changing their identity by helping them see that someone that they knew and loved behaved in a way that they didn't know or didn't expect. And so it's a really hard thing and a hard decision to make. But without that person testing, there's nothing more that DNA can do for you. And it sounds like you've done everything that genealogy can do for you. You've lined up place and time, and everything is lining up. And so it's really kind of up to you. Is that enough for you? Is that enough of the story? Or are you wanting to move forward? And essentially, the only way to move forward would be to talk to that person and ask them to take a DNA test.
That person being?
The cousin that would be.
He did a DNA test, so it's a he.
Oh, so you have the cousin, and you have.
So he's a direct link. His father is my mother's brother.
Okay. They're giving me a flashy 10 seconds. So let's just wrap this up. Thank everybody for coming. Have a wonderful session.
Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you learned something new and how things are changing, and keep returning. And on the hottest day in Utah, getting in the pool sure was a fun thing to do for us. Have a great day.